Welcome to Mystery World. Everyone likes a good mystery, especially when it comes to big, complicated books and exciting new movies. On the other hand, riddles that come from real life are much more interesting and even scary. Since the beginning of time, people have wanted to find answers to all the questions that have come up. Curiosity was one of the most important things that led to the development of technology and the study and growth of science. Even though we know more about our world than ever before, there are still some questions that haven't been answered, and it's possible that we'll never know the right answer to them. If you like playing detective as a kid, you're in for a treat because we're about to look at 5 mysteries that will never be solved. From strange objects to unsolved crimes, the world is full of mysteries and questions that are hard for humans to understand. On the other hand, it wouldn't be much of a mystery if it was easy to figure out. After all, the best mysteries are the ones that no one can solve no matter how hard they try. Fifth is the strange lighthouse on Flannan Island. On December 26, 19s, James Jucat, William MacArthur, and Thomas Marshall didn't show up for work at Eilean Moor in the Flannan Islands in Scotland, where they were supposed to be. The 74-foot, 22.6-meter lighthouse they worked together to keep up was on the island. The job was lonely because no one else lived on the island except for the keepers. The men worked in ships of 3, staying for a while and then being replaced by other keepers. When the ship of the new keeper arrived, he was surprised that he wasn't met in the usual way. A keeper on the island took in people who were visiting, most of whom were keepers starting their shifts. Nobody was there to meet the ship that night, which put the crew on edge right away. When the relief keeper went to check on the lighthouse, he found it unlocked and empty. He also saw that all the clocks had stopped at the same time. A few days' worth of entries were in their logbook, but no one had slept in the beds and there was no fire in the fireplace. All of them were out of the ordinary. Later, the people who worked at the lighthouse said they heard voices in the wind calling out the names of the 3 men who had gone missing. There were already a lot of rumors about the island that were added to the mix. People who went to help look for the missing soldiers heard stories about ghosts, gnomes, and huge birds. The search team was scared by a number of strange things that happened, so that he didn't stay the night on the island. Every possible explanation for their disappearance was looked into, including being taken by aliens, being captured by pirates, or being caught in a huge storm. We'll never know what happened to them or why they stopped being there. Scotland still talks about the mystery as one of their biggest to date. The disappearance of Lieutenant Ernest Cody and Ensign Charles Adams is the 4th one that we are going to talk about. In August of 1942, Lieutenant Ernest Cody and Ensign Charles Adams went up into the sky to look for enemy submarines. The blimp L-8 was what they used to get around. Their trip was normal and nothing out of the ordinary happened. Around the middle of their trip, they saw what they thought was an oil spill and reported it as a likely sighting. If there is oil on the water, it could mean that there is a sub underwater. That was the first and only ground control transmission that was gone. After a few hours, the airship would crash into a house. Both the lieutenant and the ensign were gone. There were a lot of theories, but none of them were backed up by evidence. Some people think that if there was a Japanese submarine there, the crew took them away, but why did they call for help? They might have fallen off somehow. Maybe one of them lost their balance, and the other tried to catch them both. Or did aliens take them away? This is a puzzle that will never be solved officially. The Sodder children is the 3rd one on our list. George and Jenny Sodder were born in Italy and lived in West Virginia. Together, they had 10 children. They lost 5 of them between Christmas Eve night and early Christmas Day morning. The house caught fire, and only George, Jenny, and 4 of their children were able to get out. At the time, the other son was away in the army. The fire chief told the parents soon after that all of the children had been completely burned up in the fire. He then closed the case without doing any more research, so the parents had to assume that 5 of their children had died. But after that, some strange pieces of a much bigger puzzle fit together. When no bodies or body parts were found after a thorough search by a pathologist, people started to wonder if something was wrong. The owner of a crematorium said that the bodies couldn't have turned to ash in 4 to 5 minutes, regardless of whether an accelerant was used or not. People have a lot of ideas about what happened, but the most common one is that the children were taken before the fire started. George had said some controversial things about Benito Mussolini, the leader of Italy. Maybe the kids who ran away were punished. The solder's ladder was missing, and neither of Georgie's coal trucks would start. When they called for help, the person who ran the switchboard didn't answer. The second is Louis LePrince's disappearance. We think of Thomas Edison when we think of the first movie ever made, but he wasn't the first. A French inventor named Louis LePrince has that title. Edison took credit for LePrince's work, so we don't know anything about him. But how could Edison have taken a whole piece of someone else's work? After filming the scenes at Leeds Bridge and Roundhay Garden, LePrince left quickly and without warning. Louis LePrince settled in France, the United States, and the United Kingdom. He was a kind and thoughtful man with a brilliant mind for his time. LePrince, who studied chemistry and physics in college, was one of many people who tried to improve the way moving photos were made. He won the race because he made the first moving film called Roundhay Garden Scene, in which a few people move around in a small segment. The mystery about LePrince started in 1890, when he was supposed to show his first projection in the United States. He disappeared after getting on a train to go see his brother before the event and sitting down. Men don't usually disappear off moving trains, but that's what happened to Ansel Adams. When the train started, LePrince and his things were on it, but when it stopped, they were gone. There will never be proof of what happened to them for sure. The most likely reason was that a dead body was found close to where and when LePrince went missing. But the information wasn't found until more than 50 years later, so there was no proof that it was him. No one will ever know what happened to Louis LePrince on that train or where he and his luggage went, but his memory will live on. Last but not the least, number 1 from our list, the crew from Sarah Joe's boat. In 1979, 5 experienced fishermen from Hawaii got on a 17-foot boat and went out into the ocean for a peaceful day. Even though it was a nice day, the worst storm in Hawaii kept hitting the islands and making the sea rough. The Coast Guard found no sign of the fishermen after searching the area and up to 73,000 square miles away. They concluded that they had died. Family and friends did their own searches, but they didn't find anything. 9 years later, a biologist found the lost Sarah Joe and the grave of one of the crew, Scott Mormon, on an island with no people. The other 4 men, Patrick Wosner, Benjamin Kalama, Peter Hanchett, and Ralph Malaikini, could not be found. There were many things that added to the mystery of this case. When the island was mapped out 6 years ago, neither the boat nor Mormon were there. Mormon was found about 3,000 miles away from where they began their fishing trip. The entrance to the lagoon on the island was small and hard to get through, but the boat made it there safely. Sarah Joe didn't know where she had been for the past 9 years. How did Scott Mormon get all by himself on the island? What happened to the 4 other men? These are the kinds of queries that will never be answered. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel because we'd be back with more content soon.